Over the course of 4 days in 1990, Rolling went on a rampage where he murdered 5 University of Florida students in a spree that terrified the nation. But despite huge media coverage, Danny Rolling was never actually caught for the murders. It was only when he was arrested for an unrelated burglary charge that he confessed to some of the most horrific murders in Florida's history and was unmasked as the Gainesville Ripper. Then, a few short years later, the Gainesville murders became even more infamous when they helped inspire the classic horror movie Scream. This is the grisly true story of Danny Rolling, the Gainesville Ripper. Danny Rolling lived an unhappy life. A tortured soul since birth, Rolling, aka the Gainesville Ripper, passed on the horrifying abuse he had endured onto his victims. Danny Harold Rolling was born on May 26, 1954 to Claudia and James Rolling in Shreveport, Louisiana. Unfortunately for Danny, his father never wanted children. He was a cop and he consistently abused his wife and children. Danny was only 1 year old when his father abused him for the first time. He was beaten because he wasn't crawling properly. When Kevin, Danny's younger brother, was born in 1955, the abuse only worsened. Claudia tried to escape the toxic marriage, but time and again she returned. When Danny failed the 3rd grade for too many absences due to illness, his mother had a nervous breakdown. Danny's school counselors described him as suffering from an inferiority complex, with aggressive tendencies and poor impulse control. Those aggressive tendencies and poor impulse control would foreshadow Danny's murderous rage later in his life. By age 11, Danny Rolling picked up music to cope with his abusive father. He played guitar and sang hymn-like songs. About this time his mother was committed to a hospital after she had slit her wrists. Danny then picked up drugs and alcohol, which only worsened his already fragile mental state. He then enlisted. The Navy wouldn't take him, so he joined the Air Force, but the military provided him no comfort. He eventually quit the Air Force after too much drug use, which included taking acid more than 100 times. Following his discharge from the military, Danny managed to marry and begin what appeared to be a normal life. Then the cycle of abuse continued. At age 23, after being with his wife for 4 years, she separated from him after he threatened to kill her. This was in 1977. Danny turned his devastation into anger and raped a woman who closely resembled his ex-wife. Later that year, he killed a woman in a car accident, which troubled him further. At 6 feet 2 inches, Danny Rolling was a massive, powerful man. From the late 1970s to 1990s, Rolling committed a series of petty crimes and thefts. He turned to a series of armed robberies to get cash, and subsequently was in and out of the criminal justice systems in Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, and Alabama. He broke out of prison several times and was fired and quit jobs just as frequently. Meanwhile, the bodies of 3 victims were found in Shreveport: 24-year-old Julie Grissom, her father Tom Grissom, and her nephew, 8-year-old Sean, who were all killed around the time Danny lost his last job and returned home in vengeance. Danny Rolling broke in May of 1990. He shot his 58-year-old father twice and nearly killed him. Though he survived, James Rolling had lost an eye and an ear. Danny then changed his identity with papers he stole after breaking into someone's house, to start a new life as Michael Kennedy Jr. in late July of 1990. But running away to Florida didn't cure Danny. It made him worse. On August 24, 1990, Danny broke into the home of Sonia Larson and Christina Powell, both incoming freshmen at the University of Florida in Gainesville. Rolling followed them home, broke into their house, and simply overpowered them. Thus began the streak of the Gainesville Ripper. The next day, Rolling killed Krista Hoyt in much the same fashion. The Gainesville Ripper put her head on a bookshelf. By now, news of the murders had spread across the university. Authorities put out as much information as they could to try to catch the suspect, and students slept in groups and took every precaution they could think of. Despite this, the Gainesville Ripper killed one more time. On August 27, Rolling attacked Tracy Poles and Manuel Taboada, both 23. He killed Tabata while he slept. Then he killed Tracy. Authorities feel Rolling did not manage to mutilate these bodies because he may have been in danger of getting caught, or was otherwise interrupted. Danny Rolling's father, who was a 20-year veteran cop of the Shreveport Police Department, had not only taught his son how to take abuse all of his life, but he also taught Danny how to cover his tracks. Police couldn't find enough evidence at crime scenes to implicate Danny Rolling. Instead of leaving the duct tape on his dead bodies, Danny disposed of it in dumpsters to get rid of any fingerprints. Danny also used cleaning solvents on the dead bodies to remove any traces of semen. Some of the female bodies were left, which offered authorities a clue into the killer's method. The Gainesville Ripper continued to steal from homes and gas stations until he was finally caught in Ocala after a high-speed chase. It wasn't until January 1991, more than 4 months after the murders, that police caught a break. Because of the similarities of the murders in Shreveport and Gainesville, Danny Rolling's DNA was similar enough to DNA left at the Gainesville murder scenes to charge him with murder. Rolling confessed to being the Gainesville Ripper. Prosecutors found enough evidence to convict him, and he was subsequently executed on October 25, 2006, in Florida. A total of 47 people witnessed the execution of the Gainesville Ripper, which is double the capacity of the viewing room. Kevin Williamson was an aspiring writer in the 1990s when the Gainesville Ripper murders caught his attention. Williamson used the case to create a screenplay for a horror movie which revolved around the murders of college students and the media frenzy that ensued. That screenplay turned into the 1996 cult classic Scream. The success of Scream skyrocketed Williamson's career. He's now engaged in the Fox series The Following, which taps into hysteria on a college campus.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment.